Yes, welcome to the State of Spurs on Pure Coys, transfer drama, Levy debate, and all the usual Tottenham chaos. And helping me make sense of it all today is the brilliant Luke from Spotlight on Spurs. Let's get cracking. How you doing, Luke? Thank you for coming on, mate.
I'm not too bad. Thank you for having me. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to make sense of Spurs, mate. I'll be completely honest. If anyone's able to make sense of Spurs, then they're a bit of a genius, I think. But between us, let's try and see. Let's do the best we can, eh?
Absolutely, mate. Before we get into it, guys, please do me a solid. Please like and please subscribe to the channel. I am chasing down that 1,000, getting closer by the day, but any help would be much appreciated. And if you haven't already, please get over to Luke at Spotlight on Spurs. I will put his link in the description. So, Luke, let's go on with it. Let's crack on with it. The first question I got for you is just simple. I just want to know a little bit more about you and why Spurs. Why Spurs? Out of all the, I mean, sounds like you've got a London accent, so I'm guessing you're a Londoner. But there's a lot of teams in London. So why Tottenham?
I didn't choose. I was chosen, mate. I didn't have a choice in this matter. My dad is actually a Chelsea fan. My uncle and granddad are massive Spurs fans. So my dad took me to a Chelsea game when I was very young. As soon as I got home, my mum broke the horrendous news to my uncle, who swiftly said, "Right, you're coming Spurs next week." Chelsea lost, Spurs won. That's it. It was chosen. The club was chosen for me.
Yes.
I was never able to live it down if I was to have gone on that side of London. So, yeah, Spurs was the club, and that's it.
Yeah. Mine's very similar. In fact, my best mate was a Man United fan growing up, and he used to love. I'm a little bit older than you, but he used to love Gary Bailey, who was like this blonde goalkeeper. When he used to dive, his hair used to go everywhere. And it was just a thing we used to pretend we're Gary Bailey. And my dad was a massive Spurs fan. He sat me in front of the TV in the 81 Cup final and said, "Right, son, who do you want to win?" And not knowing football at all, I was like, "I want the team in blue to win, Dad." Of course, we were playing Man City. And short, sharp smack to the back of the head, and no, you effing well don't. And the rest is history. I was a Tottenham fan there on in. So, but we haven't really spoken since, not properly since, obviously, Ange left.
Mhm.
So briefly, obviously, we don't want to get too much into Ange, but tell me how you feel about his tenure. And, because obviously you were quite supportive of Ange, understandably. How do you feel about his tenure?
It's a real tough one, isn't it? I can understand both points of view in terms of the old Ange in, Ange out debate. I can understand why they got rid of him, but I can also see reasons why they potentially could or should have kept him. um, if you look at the facts without context, where the season he came in, we had no Europe. If you'd have said to any Spurs fan, you will finish fifth in the first year and then win a Europa League the second year, they would have taken it. I have absolutely no doubt. And if people deny that, I don't agree with it. Fact that we lost Harry Kane, a lot of the fan base said that if we lose Kane, we're going to be a mid-table team. And then he obviously finished fifth in the first season. A large part of that's obviously down to the 10 games, but that they are the facts of it. I struggled when he won the Europa League as a club. I just struggled to see the sense in the whole thing is the game's about glory. It's about winning trophies, and I'm not excusing the league form. The league form was absolutely horrendous. Yes, there was reasons behind it, but it still wasn't good enough. But if he would have finished fourth last year, would he still be in a job? I would say he probably would be. So therefore, we're saying that trophies aren't the be all and end all of football. It's finishing in the top half of the league. So it's a real tough one. But again, I can make complete sense of it in terms of it was the Europa League. We're not in that anymore. What would we be like with them tactics in the Champions League? So there is arguments on both sides. And the thing I've been saying since I joined YouTube, essentially, I joined YouTube as part of we should be backing Ange and Ange should stay in the job for that season. I thought he would win us the Europa League, which obviously he did. But there isn't a right or a wrong here. Whenever I speak to people that are more Ange in or more Ange out, it's like they're wrong, I'm right. but actually we're both right in terms of the league form isn't good enough. A lot of his tactics were incorrect, didn't make adjustments when he should have. However, he got it over the line when your Mourinho, your Poch, your Conte couldn't and didn't. And a lot of people make out the fact that we had a really easy run. But if you actually look at Chelsea's Champions League run in 2019, Europa League run in 2019, it was horrendous. Nobody ever talks about that because nobody cares. So next year, no one will care about what the run was like. It will be about we won it sort of thing. And also to caveat that as well, Conte lost to poor teams in cups. Conte went out to, I think, Middlesbrough and Sheffield United. So it's okay going, oh, yeah, we should be beating them. That's fine. But Spurs haven't done that. And they haven't done that for a considerably long time. It's not like every year we get knocked out by your Liverpool and City. All right, we do on occasions, but we don't regularly. It's not always them teams that knock us out. So I can understand it from both sides. I don't personally think that Ange is the long-term manager, and I could see issues this year with him being the manager with certain tactics in Champions League and everything else. I just think that if you're coming inside Thomas Frank now, what is his objectives? Because it's not to win a trophy, because if it was to win a trophy, then Ange would still be in the job. If it's to win a trophy and be competitive in the league, Spurs have never done that. Spurs have always, whenever we've won a cup, it's always been 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. So, that's, as I say, both sides are absolutely right in what they think. And it's just what way you sort of lean in my eyes.
It is a difficult one, isn't it? Because as you know, I was quite vehement that I wanted Ange out most of last season.
Mm-hmm.
Get me wrong, when I first started a YouTube channel, it was the start of last season, and I was very much Ange in. We'd finished 5th. We played good football. We played attacking football. But obviously, as the season went on, defeat after defeat, I become tired of just watching Spurs. And fantastic that we won it, a Europa League. And you're absolutely right. But I find it difficult, this whole fact over feelings. For me, that's somewhat on YouTube. That's a buzzword on YouTube that drives me insane because I'm a football fan and I feel everything is feelings for me. None of it's facts. So when people come out and say, well, Ange lost 20 odd games in the, yes, he did. And I was one of the ones who said it. Ange lost that many in the Premier League, lost 10 at home. These are facts. But for me, that it was more overriding the fact that I didn't feel in love with Spurs anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't so much the results and where we were in the league. I just didn't feel that connection. So for me, yeah, Ange had to go. But listen, he won us a Europa League and he will forever be a cult hero for that. Moving on to Thomas Frank. Are you happy with him? Was he your first choice? What do you think he can bring to Tottenham next season?
So there's two ways of looking at this. When we had Ange, I didn't think that Frank should have been one of the front runners for the job. I've always liked Frank. I've never kind of said anything negative about Frank. I've always liked him. I thought he was very good personality wise. I liked the fact he was at Brentford. There's a few videos that kind of came out with how much he is about family, community, etc. Obviously, he's very adaptable. I thought tactically he's good. He sets up his teams well. And then as the seasons have gone on, he's sprinkled a little bit of stardust in that forward line to make him a little bit better, kind of on the eye, I guess. So when Ange was here, my thing was, if you're sacking the manager that's delivered you the trophy, it's because you want to go to a completely new level. So therefore, the manager needs to go to a completely new level. Now, some would argue that Frank is a new level to Ange, but facts over feelings. The facts don't prove that in terms of he's never won anything. He's never competed in Europe. He's never competed at these absolute top levels. And yeah, you can kind of bring in your Brentfords, and I've heard loads of people say, well, Pochettino couldn't. Pochettino was at Southampton. He came in and done a decent job, correct, but he didn't get over the line. And that's what we're basically saying, is that's where we want to become, and that's what we want to do. And then you could also argue it the other way and say, well, then you should say that managers like Sean Dyche deserve that chance because they were very, very good doing what they were doing, and they were making Burnley very competitive, and et cetera, et cetera. So again, you can use the little facts that make sense of your argument, sort of thing. But for me, it's just that I felt that we should be going to a completely new level. Which, let's use it as in terms of Europa League, Champions League. For me, we should be appointing a Champions League manager if we're sacking the manager that's just won the first trophy in 17 years. So I always said I don't think Frank should be necessarily in the running. Good manager, but I don't think we should be the gamble. I think there should be a step up from where he's at now to a bigger team, maybe play in Europe, see how he gets on, and then we take a punt after that. However, as soon as Ange goes, it's a complete blank slate then. And it's like, well, can Frank come in and make changes? Can he make us better in defensive areas? 100%. And as I said, this whole that players are going to be absolutely fuming because Ange is gone, I had no doubts that Frank would win them over. Frank is a talker. Frank speaks very well. He's someone that you would love to play for. So I didn't think that was ever going to be a problem. Has he got a lot of positives in his game? 100%. Has he got... I initially said negatives, but when I've spoken to people, it's not negatives, it's unknowns. Yes, he has. Being able to play 2 or 3 games a week, however you want to call it, is something he's never dealt with. So no one can tell me he's going to be able to adapt to that and he's going to be able to be good at that, because there's no proof of it. You can think he can because that's your opinion, but there's no facts that prove that whatsoever. He's a very tactical manager. So virtually every single game he plays, he has a full solid week to be able to prepare for the opponents that he's coming up against. When you're playing Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, whatever it is, you don't have that time on the training pitch. You're not able to come up with all of these different tactical ways of being able to defeat your opposition, etc. And the other concern for me is it's not really a negative on Frank. It's more on us as a fan base. And I've said this from the very, very start, and I've been nullified and vilified in certain areas about it. But Frank doesn't really have a way of playing. He's very adaptable. He looks at the opposition and he kind of works out where would be able to hurt them most. I don't think Spurs fans, at the start, I think they'll be happy with it because Ange was so completely the opposite way. But I think eventually, if we start playing, say, Wolves away or Wolves at home, and they're going with, say, 2 up front, and we start changing to go, actually, we're going to adjust to them, and Spurs fans are eventually going to sit there and go, do you know what? We shouldn't be adjusting to them. They should be adjusting to us. We're better than them. So it depends on how adaptable he is going to be. You can get away with it at Brentford. They're happy to go and get points here, there, and everywhere. Whereas with us, we're going to be sitting there going, we are a big club. We should be playing the same way week in, week out. And if it doesn't work, we then have an alternative, but we shouldn't be doing that from the get-go. But we shall see. There's so many unknowns to this. What formation is he going to play? How is he going to play? Is it going to be 5 at the back? Is it going to be attacking football, as he said? We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. You're bang on. And I'm really pleased with Frank, but you are right. He hasn't done it at the top level. And it's definitely a step up from Brentford to Tottenham. I know people will say, oh, Brentford finished above Spurs last season, but Tottenham is a massive club. No matter what people want to say, we are a huge club, and it is a big step up for him. I really hope he does well. But you're right, there are unknowns, but I am excited to see what he can do at Spurs.
Yeah.
As far as transfers go, are you happy with the business Tottenham have done so far this season?
We're just going to caveat that. We said that before we started. At the moment, Morgan Gibbs-White's not been signed. Yeah. Let's presume that goes ahead. I think that's a very, very good start. I didn't expect that they would be 2 players we'd signed. If you ask me in the summer, I've always said that we needed a right winger, that we needed a central midfielder, but probably more on the defensive side. And then we needed some backup in the fullback area, potentially a left centre back, or one that could play left centre back and left back.
Yeah.
But if someone would have said to me, do you think that Spurs would have got West Ham's, he's not their best player, but a player from West Ham, my answer would have been no. The club will just not entertain it. West Ham won't be happy selling, and we won't pay what they'd want. And then the same with Nottingham Forest, really. I just didn't think these are two players that we'd target. However, I think both of them are big improvements on what we've got. It'd be interesting to see where Morgan Gibbs-White plays, where they see his future. I think he's got a lot of qualities that could be beneficial in a lot of different positions, but I don't really feel like you sign him to play him everywhere. He's going to have to kind of have a almost set position and then play additional places after that. I still think we need the enforcements. I still think that the defensive side of the game and the midfield needs to be looked at. So yeah, I'm happy with what we've done, but I still think that we need more. I am slightly different opinion to a lot of Spurs fans who kind of still go on the Palhinha kind of signing. I think under Ange was almost the perfect player because it was the system that was there. I think in a Frank system, you're probably going to have more protection. I don't think we need as a defensive destroyer, shall we say, but I still think that we need someone who's able to operate in the defensive spaces, because I don't think that Bentancur, Basuma, Sarr, Bergvall, I don't think they're up to it in that sort of aspect of the game. I think they need a bit more help in there.
So have you got a name? I mean, obviously we're being heavily linked with Wharton. If it's not him, because we're looking north of 80 million, aren't we? If we really want him, what other players do you think we could bring in that would do a good job?
See, it's a real tough one on the basis that a lot of the signings, and apparently what's been fed out to the media recently, is that Spurs are targeting Premier League experienced players. So
Okay.
when you go down that route, you've got a Prem tax, and then Wharton being English, you've got an English tax, and the fact that he's under
Yeah.
24 is then another tax. So you end up paying so high for these sorts of players. Whereas if you looked abroad, I was on Sava's show yesterday discussing, he was on Sean's show yesterday with Sava. We were kind of discussing about like your players like Manu Kone at Roma. You've got Thuram at Juventus, who are probably not going to cost as much ability-wise. Could argue are slightly better at this moment in time. Wages are not going to be a problem, that sort of thing. But I really like João Gomez at Wolves. I think he'd be a very good fit. I do like Manu Kone. I think he's a good player. And again, I'm not against Palhinha, but I thought like he was the absolute perfect signing for Ange, whereas under Frank, I don't really feel like we need that. I do think that we'll go and get one, because I think if we didn't, I think we would have probably gone after Norgard. And Norgard's relationship with Frank was like father and son almost. So I'd be very surprised. I don't think Norgard's going to start at Arsenal. So I'd be very surprised if he wouldn't have come to Spurs and been a bit more of a rotational player as well. But who's to know? So yeah, there are a few names out there, but yeah, it's a lot of money to go and spend on one player that's had 1 year in the Premier League with Wharton.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? And people forget that when they slate people like Solanke for having one good season. And then
Yeah.
suddenly we're thinking about spending nearly 100 million on another player who's probably had 1.5 good seasons, to be fair to him. But I don't know about you, but I'm just really excited to see. I've been thinking today about the three behind the striker,
Mm-hmm.
and having like a Kudus, a Madison, and a Morgan Gibbs White that can all play in the 10, off the right, off the left, just all interchanging. And for me, that really excites me for next season, if of course we get Morgan Gibbs White.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. As I say, I still feel like we need a little bit more up front, and I haven't really.
Yeah.
It's all about levels, I guess, and in terms of where you want to get to. Is Solanke a top 4 striker? I don't think so. When you compare him to your sort of Isaacs, that sort of level, who are the absolute top of the top. However, I think he will be better this year. I think he'll score a few more goals. I think we've got enough coverage in that attacking area that when Madison was out last year, we really struggled. And I don't think if we've got Morgan Gibbs White, if we've got Kudos, obviously Kulu coming back, I think we'll actually be better. But I feel like we do need to kind of get rid of some of them players in that forward line, and then once we've got some out, we can then potentially look at bringing someone in. there's been a lot of conversations about Richie. I think Richie actually fits a Frank system really well. I think Solanke does as well in terms of they're big, they're powerful, they run hard, they work hard. They're a bit, especially Richarlison, he's a bit adaptable. If Frank wants to go with one up front, Richie can come off the left, and if he goes, so obviously Richie's brilliant in the air as well, and we're probably looking at set pieces being part of the tactics this year. So I think a lot of it depends on what kind of goes out the door before what we bring in. But I would like one more in that forward line. Obviously, there's question marks on Son. There's question marks on Richie. There's what do we do with Brennan Johnson? Is someone going to come in for him? Obviously, the winger kind of in the Premier League at this moment with Alanga, Madweki, Kudos. Like, there's a lot of right wingers that are moving around. Does someone make space for a Brennan Johnson and offer what the kind of rate is at this moment in time because of what he scored? So it'd be really interesting. But I think a lot of it. I think once we get Gibbs White, I think we'll look for a central midfielder, and then I think after that, it depends on what goes out the door because our squad. If we get Gibbs White, I think our squad is 33, if I'm right. That does include some youngsters, but that means that there needs to be like eight to nine, maybe even 10 players that need to go out the door. So I think, as I said, it'll be Gibbs White. We'll look for a midfielder, and then we'll start having to sell off before we start seeing a few more signings.
So talking about selling off,
Yep.
obviously not including the youngsters that are probably either going to go out on loan or be in around the first team, because obviously we can't. Players like Archie Gray will have to stay because we can't send them out on loan because we need them for the club trained quota, don't we? So he has to stay, I think. Players like that.
He's not in Europe. He's not club trained yet because you have to be with the club for 2 or 3 years, I think it is. But if he goes out on loan, he won't be able to make that quota because you've got to do it by the time he's 21. So I think if he stays, he could actually become club trained by the time he's 22. So
that's why I think probably we'll keep players like that. So who do you think actually? Who would you sell out of the current first team squad?
Again, it comes down to who's going to come in and who's going to take these players. If I had the option, you've got Richie would probably go out the door. But again, this is caveated on the basis that it's who we bring in. So I was one that kind of said, let's get rid of Højbjerg, bring someone in that's going to be able to take on his position. And then we just never brought in a player to replace him. So it's okay if I say, for instance, let's get rid of Richie. That's great. But if we don't bring in a striker, actually it's probably not the best choice. So this is all based on the fact that we go and get replacements. But I think Richie goes. I think Solomon will go. I think Yang will probably go out on loan. With Son, I can see positives on and negatives to keeping and selling. I think that Son, if used correctly, being closer to the goal in a rotation squad where he's not going to be relied on to play week in, week out, 90 minutes, I think you can get a better set of numbers than we got this year. However, is it the perfect time to sell? Is him staying for that 10 years, winning a trophy and bailing out at, let's say, the top? Is that perfect for everyone if we got 20, 30 million? I think so. I think that I think he'll be a good weapon for Frank because I think Frank will get better out of him. However, if he thinks, do you know what, it's probably time, then I think I can understand both sides basically. So I could see that happening. However, I could also see him staying just as much. Bentancur, Basuma. I think Basuma's most likely to go for a couple of reasons. They've both got 1 year left. I think Basuma is incredibly inconsistent. I think from what Conte has spoken about him tactically, he struggles with instructions, and Frank is very tactical. So therefore, I can see positives in why he would thrive in a Frank system because we'd have a better setup around him. But I could also see where he struggles because tactically, I don't think he's the best. But, and this is only something I considered recently, when Frank had the kind of interview he had, one of the names he picked out in terms of top players was Bentancur. So if he's picking out Bentancur, then that tells me that Basuma's the one that would then leave. On top of that, obviously, you had new contract talks about Bentancur towards the end of the season. So I think Basuma is the most likely to go there. I think that there are a lot of players where Spurs are not transfer listing them, say, but if a good offer came in, they'd go, yeah, do you know what? Maybe. Do you know what I mean? Like players, um, for instance, Saar might be one of them. If we go and get Morgan Gibbs White and we go and get a Walton, let's just say in this instance, is there enough room to kind of get two out the door potentially? So I think there's a lot of players that are either Frank's waiting to kind of see how they are for a couple of weeks and then say, yes, this is a player I could work with, or no, it isn't. Um, it's not realistic to expect 10 signings or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So we have to kind of play it in terms of, I've said this for ages, it's about priorities. We need to improve the 11. We improve the 11. We sell off the players that don't make the squad, and then next year, do we go and improve? Let's use Vicario as an example. Is Vicario a top 4 keeper? Say some people would say no, but actually, is he a top 6 keeper? Probably. So therefore, you don't need to improve him now. But if you want to get into the Champions League week, like year in year out, that may be an option that you've got to upgrade. But do you need to upgrade him right now? No, that will be something that will come later down the line in say a year, 18 months time, whatever. So we need to have a good squad planning, which is something that Spurs have struggled with in my eyes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Basuma, I think, is almost certain to leave if we can find him a club. He's already stated that he doesn't want to move anywhere else but the Premier League. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone comes in for him in the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree. I think he's incredibly inconsistent. I think he is rash in the tackle, gets sent off, switches off, and like you say, doesn't take tactics very well. Sonny, I agree with as well. And the one thing with Sonny is I don't want him to go down the same road that Lloris went down when,
Yeah.
he's been such a great keeper, but the last couple of years, I think the fans started to resent him a little bit, and it wasn't his fault. We just probably should have sold him earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And, 30 million for Sonny now or let him go on a free is, for me, as a business, then we should be letting him go. But he's been a great servant to the club. I see today we've been linked with Harvey Elliott. I don't know whether that's as an alternative to Morgan Gibbs White or as well as. Have you heard anything?
Yeah, well, I've definitely heard it from the fan base that they'd like to take him. Again, think he's a good player, but character wise, I just don't like him. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
you had that famous kind of saying that's rolling around the Spurs fan base with Frank saying no dickhead policy, and he just strikes me as one that is. Now I'm not saying as a person, I'm just saying on the pitch, the way that he carries himself. I think, if I'm not mistaken, when he was a bit younger, I know he's not that old now, but when he was a bit younger, I'm pretty sure he started slagging off Harry Kane and the way he spoke.
yeah,
And it just strikes me as the sort of character that he's got a bit of bite, but I think it's potentially over the edge a little bit. Um,
yeah,
as I say, from a quality point of view, no doubt, I think he's a good player. He wouldn't be one that I'd go for. I think there's other players that we could go and get. My kind of trump to that would be McAtee. I'd like him to come in from City. If we're going to go down that route in terms of sort of very similar sort of player, small player, diminutive, good passer, left-footed, can operate in a variety of positions. I think that would be the player that I'd go for. Probably a bit cheaper from rumours. I think it's 25 million, 30 million City want. I think Harvey Elliott's more like the 40 million mark.
yeah,
But I would hope that is kind of a push for about Forest for Morgan Gibbs White, saying
mm,
there's other options out there that we will go for if you carry this
yeah.
on, because I think someone will take that release clause. It's obviously a big debate and legalities around all of that sort of thing, but yeah, I can understand why people want him. I just don't, personality wise, I can't get on board at this moment in time.
No, I'm similar. I think Harvey Elliott is a lovely player to watch. Great left foot, really elegant on the ball, scores goals, assists. I really like him, but you're right. I think he's on the cusp of arrogant and just going over that cusp. he's a little bit of a knob, but he is a good player.
It's
Um,
good
and I
description.
think I think you're right with the Morgan Gibbs White thing. I think it might be a kick up the bum to say, you need to get moving here, or we're going to go move our target to someone else. And
Mhm. I think
for
what's
me,
being forgotten
go,
about, sorry, I think what's being
it's all right,
forgotten about in or in regards to Morgan Gibbs White is that I've seen loads of Forest fans absolutely slagging him off, saying that he's
mate.
useless. I've seen loads of Forest fans
Yeah.
saying I don't understand why he wants to go to Spurs. I've seen a lot of Spurs fans angry at the owner, angry at Forest, and etc. I've not seen many go, well, how does Morgan Gibbs White feel in this? Because Morgan Gibbs White has a release clause that's been matched. He's agreed, from what the most reports are, he's agreed terms with Spurs, which means he's willing to go and he wants to go. Forest are now saying he can't leave. How does that make him feel? And how does that make future signings feel when you go, well, actually, someone's even matched the release clause and they're still saying they don't want to let him go? Like, how would he feel in this whole situation? Now, let's say Spurs pulled out and went elsewhere. He would have a legal case against Forest because they've turned around and said, if someone pays this, you can go. And then when someone's matched it, they've gone absolutely no. So again, it could get really, really messy. And I don't see why for all parties it the deal isn't agreed and then there's a discussion taking place after the fact, because I just feel like if he stays there, everybody loses. So Forest have a player that doesn't want to be there. Morgan White doesn't want to be there quite clearly because he's agreed a contract elsewhere. Spurs want the player, so no one actually wins here. Everybody loses. So yeah, I just find it a very, very strange situation.
It is, and I do feel for Morgan Gibbs White a little bit. I think you're right. He is kind of in the middle. You've got Forest saying to Spurs, "You've done something illegal. We're reporting you." You know, and now you got Spurs saying to Forest, "Well, we've matched the release fee, so you're doing something illegal, so we're going to report you." And Morgan Gibbs White is in the middle, like, what's going on? But at the same time, for me, as professional as Morgan Gibbs White has been, and he's been fantastic going back to training, saying in the media that I'm not gonna push, I'm just gonna get on with my football. At some point, if he really wants to move to Spurs, he is probably gonna have to hand in a transfer request or do something
Yeah,
because else Forest will just be like he's not going.
I think that's how it's going to plan out. So I think at this moment in time, obviously this is all just me guessing, but I think at this moment in time, Forest feel like there's some wrongdoing being done. Spurs are kind of like, well, we didn't sign any of the NDAs. We are absolutely fine to ask certain questions. Whether people should be telling us the answers is sort of one thing. But I think that Morgan Gibbs White, and I've seen a few people say he should demand now, but it's very early on. Let's just the deal was only a few days ago that it was kind of on. So people are saying about handing it in now. I think Spurs will eventually say, right, we're not wasting any more time here. We're gonna go elsewhere, and then it will be down for Gibbs White to make that decision. But again, I think people are forgetting that he doesn't need to hand in a transfer request right now because he's already agreed a contract at Spurs. He's already agreed it. So people are saying, well, he needs to come out and say he wants to come to Spurs. Well, he wouldn't have agreed a contract if he didn't want to come to Spurs. So he's already said that to Forest. He's already said, I'm prepared to
Mm.
leave and this is where I want to go. He just hasn't come out in the media and gone, I want to leave, because he's done it in a way that bonuses and loyalty bonuses are all still paid to him, because all he's done is agree a contract that in theory Spurs have matched the release clause, so therefore he's entitled to do. So um, it's a real tough one for him. But I think that will be the next step. I think if we don't get this deal over the line, I think Spurs will turn around and say to him, unfortunately, this is something you need to kind of push now. But at this moment in time, I still think that there's a little bit of conversations taking place.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I would hope maybe within the next week it might be sorted, but I've got a feeling this is going to run and run maybe towards August. I hope not. I really do.
Mm.
But Luke, we will leave it there, mate. What have you got coming up on your channel?
So live streams every Thursday, mate, 9:30 p.m. UK time. We have a variety of different guests on, different opinions. Manjin, Ange out, Frank in, Frank out. We have them all on my channel. Love hearing from people with different opinions. It makes me see things slightly differently. Obviously, you've got to kind of have everyone's opinion to make your own. There gives you a little bit more balanced. But yeah, so we'll be going live on Thursday, every Thursday. I'd love to be able to tell you what will be discussed, but just with Spurs, you never know. I think it was Thursday when news kind of broke, and we're talking about, Morgan Gibbs White's almost a done deal. He's coming to, I think he was due to have his medical on the Friday. So Thursday we're saying, look, we've got these two players, how wonderful it is. This week we're discussing whether the Morgan Gibbs White deal is even going to go through, which is just typical Spurs. But so every Thursday 9:30. We'll be live, so it'd be great to see you guys there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me again, and I will be putting Luke's link to the channel in the description, so please get over and subscribe to the channel. Guys, thanks for joining us, and see us on the next one. And as always, stay positive, stay poised, and stay pure coys.